Episode 108. Steam rises off the pavement while bunnies popcorn around the garden, which is bursting at the seams with greens, tempting their noses. Summer in Pawtuxet. Greetings and welcome into the Pawtuxet General. I am your host, Jess. It has been a minute or two since we chatted last, and the General has been quite busy these past few weeks, which is wonderful. However, it does sometimes keep us from talking with you, constant listener. Don't fear. Exciting things are coming, and I can't wait to tell you about them. I would say that the weather in our little village has been strange lately, but in truth, the weather has been wacky all over the world at the moment. I hear you, not news. That said, a week or two ago, the Pawtuxet General team was huddled under a dripping tent. A constant listener asked me to talk a little about striking tales of local lightning. Thinking that I knew it all, I mentioned the Edgewood Yacht Club fire. We both thought it was started by lightning, but that was not true. Although there was a violent electrical storm that night whose winds fueled the fire, it was started by an electrical short from equipment used in renovation at the clubhouse. I mean, I would love to spin a yarn in which ghost-driven lightning strikes created intense fires that burn the much-beloved Edgewood Yacht Club to the waterline, perhaps in paranormal revenge for the burning of the Gaspee. But none of that happened. Instead, today we will discuss devastating fires around Rhode Island, some of which lightning ignited. From 1878, we have an example how one should not hide under trees during an electrical storm by Smithfield Fire Department history page. The Warwick Beacon says,
"This just in. If they had remained at home reading Sunday papers, they might have lived. Providence, Rhode Island, May 26th. This afternoon, several men were preparing to have a fish fry on the island of Waterman Reservoir in Smithfield, when a shower came up and lightning struck the party. William Colvin of Scote and Daniel Knowlton of Greenville, standing back to back under a tree, were killed. Eugene Knowlton, brother of Daniel, and Jeremiah Argel, his hired man, injured, their boots being stripped off, feet burned, and limbs partially paralyzed. The other 3 men were stunned, but not serious." 1878.
The Warwick Beacon talks about lightning as a cause and effect in these events. In November 1966, a fire at the Apponaug Mill complex occurred. This time, it came when a 175-foot water tower was struck by lightning and burst into flames. The blaze burned for several hours before it was finally extinguished. Much of the difficulty in fighting this fire came from the belief held by the authorities in charge that the water tower was unsafe, and they refused to allow firemen to climb the structure to fight the blaze at close range. The wooden top of the tower collapsed into the tank, and high winds, gusting to 35 miles an hour, threatened to spread the fire to the rest of the Apponaug complex. Fortunately, firemen were able to put up a water screen, and when the weather improved, a state helicopter was used to smother the fire with a water and detergent mixture. The fire, which started at 7:30 a.m., was not subdued until late afternoon. The tower, as it stands today, is a result of this fire in 1966. In September 1969, fire again struck in Apponaug at a time when there were 33 businesses in the complex. This time, the buildings were almost completely destroyed. The blaze was discovered at approximately 1:45 a.m. by Leonard W. Forrest, Jr., a former fire lieutenant in Cranston. Within a very short time after the discovery, Warwick firefighters were on the scene. The blaze began in the west end of the complex and quickly traveled for several hundred yards. At its most intense period, flames shot well over 100 feet in the air and showered the surrounding area with large sparks. In a very short time, the complex, owned then by the People's Moving and Storage and the Anchor Realty Company, both headed by Russell Howard, was engulfed in flames. The main difficulty in controlling this fire was the inadequate water supply. Fire Chief Thomas E. Duckworth explained why the 1969 fire was so much more devastating than the one in 1961. He said that the water in the Mill Trench in 1961 was high and supplied the firemen with thousands of gallons of water, while in September of 1969 it was nearly dry. He went on to say, "I had the equipment, but what could I do? The more lines I put on, I just robbed from one to give to the other." Whew, a cautionary tale. Thank you again to the Warwick Beacon. I went looking for a Revolutionary War recipe, and instead I found 3. From AmericanRevolution.com, the first is salt pork with peas and potatoes. This recipe is still used in New England during the winter for a good stick-to-your-ribs supper. For this recipe, you will need 2 pounds salt pork, rinsed and cut into chunks, 4 cups of water, or enough to cover the pork in the pot, 2 cups dried peas soaked overnight and drained, 4 large potatoes peeled and quartered, 1 large onion chopped, and salt and pepper to taste if needed depending on the saltiness of the pork. Place the salt pork in a large pot and add water until the pork is just covered. Bring to a boil, then reduce the heat and simmer for about 1 hour to tenderize and desalinate the pork slightly. Add the soaked and drained peas, potatoes, and onion to the pot. Return to a boil, then reduce heat and simmer until the vegetables are tender and the peas have broken down slightly, about 45 minutes to an hour. Taste and adjust the seasoning with salt and pepper. I go hard on the pepper, though be cautious with additional salt due to the inherent saltiness of the pork. Serve hot, ensuring each plate gets a mix of pork, peas, and potatoes with some of the broth, and enjoy. Peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold, peas porridge in the pot 9 days old. Some like it hot, some like it cold, some like it in the pot 9 days old. This, my friends, is the actual recipe for peas porridge. You do not have to wait 9 days, though. For this recipe, you will need 2 cups dried yellow split peas, 6 cups of water, 1 large onion finely diced, 1 teaspoon salt or to taste, 2 tablespoons unsalted butter, and freshly ground black pepper to taste. Yum! Rinse the split peas thoroughly under cold running water. Check and remove any dirt or debris, including stones. Place peas in a large bowl, cover with cold water, and soak overnight. Drain and rinse. In a large pot, combine the soaked peas, 6 cups of fresh water, diced onion, and salt. Bring to a boil over high heat, then reduce the heat to low. Simmer, covered, stirring occasionally until the peas are completely soft and start to fall apart, about 1 hour. Use a potato masher or immersion blender to mash the peas into a thick, semi-smooth texture. Adjust the consistency by adding more water if it's too thick. Stir in the butter until melted and season with salt and freshly ground black pepper to taste. Serve hot as a side or main dish. Well, since you've been so good, let's have dessert. This recipe totally stands the test of time. Apple tansy is delicious as it sounds. Obviously, a cast iron pan would work best, but I think you'll enjoy this dish in any receptacle. For apple tansy, you will need 4 large tart apples, peeled, cored, and sliced, 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 4 large eggs, 1/4 of a cup granulated sugar, and 1/4 of a teaspoon ground nutmeg. Preheat your broiler. Melt the butter in a large oven-safe skillet under medium heat. Add the apple slices and cook, stirring occasionally, until they are golden and softened about 10 minutes. In a bowl, whisk together the eggs, sugar, and nutmeg until well combined. Pour the egg mixture over the cooked apples in the skillet, gently tilting the skillet to distribute the eggs evenly. Cook without stirring until the edges begin to set, about 2 minutes. Then place the skillet under the broiler. Broil until the top is set and golden, about 3 to 5 minutes. Watch carefully to prevent burning. Carefully remove from the broiler and slice into wedges and serve warm. Enjoy. I want to tell you about my friend Mike and his electromagnetic pinball museum and restoration arcade. It's an all-inclusive place to relax and share anything related to modern pinball and arcade games. A group of pinball and arcade fans with an addiction to games of all kinds and Lego too. $10 gets you free play on pinball and arcade games all day. You can find them at 881 Main Street, Pawtucket, Rhode Island, or online at www.electromagneticpinballmuseum.com. Getting ready for the 4th of July festivities this year, I was remembering my grandmother's Independence Day barbecues. Hot dogs, baked beans, seriously overcooked burgers, ambrosia salad, potato salad, pie, and punch. Seeing as I have her cookbooks, I got out Grandma's old-fashioned molasses recipes, the 1940s edition with the blue cover. If you are interested in this wild cookbook, you can find it online for about $15. But for right now, in honor of strawberry and rhubarb season, let's try rhubarb punch. Described as zestful, tasty, and refreshing. Of course, this pamphlet or small stapled paperback put out by Grandma's Old-Fashioned Molasses is filled with small print recipes featuring molasses. And not just any molasses, but Grandma's, which, as it says on the front of the book, having been tested and approved by Westfield Testing and Research Laboratories in Westfield, Massachusetts. Dr. Lewis B. Allen, director, says, "This is a pure, high-grade molasses of excellent flavor and free from adulteration or substitution." Thanks, Doc. I'll take your word for it. But if you think trolling your friends group started with the internet, nope. On the second to the last page, just this short paragraph in the middle of the page. It reads, "If you found this book helpful, won't you send us the names of your friends who would like a copy and who would appreciate Grandma's Old-Fashioned Molasses? Just use the coupon on the next page." Alrighty then. Our first drink recipe, made for a party and sounds like a crowd pleaser. The second, well, isn't. More on that in a bit. But first, for this rhubarb punch recipe, you will need 3 pounds rhubarb, 1 quart of water, 1½ cups sugar, 1 cup Grandma's molasses, 1½ cups orange juice and zest, 1 cup lemon juice and zest, 3/4 of a cup shredded pineapple, and 3 quarts of iced water. Now on to a possible
disturbing recipes of the past.
Also from the same book, the Sunset Special. Of the two of today's drinks, this is one I'd add liquor to if you're looking for a cocktail. Perhaps 2½ ounces of vodka per serving would mix well with this unexpected mix. For this recipe, you will need 2 cups of tomato juice, 2 cups of pineapple juice, 1/4 cup Grandma's molasses. Mix and chill. Serve in ginger ale glasses, garnished with a sprig of mint. A bit of charged water may be added, also known as seltzer. Enjoy. And now for our continuing segment, The House on the Corner, a story from MountVernon.org. Great George's Ghost, Josiah Quincy III and his Fright Night at Mount Vernon. Given his oft-mythologized life, it was perhaps not surprising that George Washington has been the subject of numerous ghost stories, and given its history as a cultural and historical landmark, it is little surprise that many of these stories occurred at Mount Vernon. By Adam D. Sprinson, Ph.D. Ghost stories involving Washington cropped up repeatedly in the popular press and lore. One such story was written by prominent Boston politician Josiah Quincy Jr., reminiscing about his father's visit to Mount Vernon. The son and grandson of two former Boston mayors, prominent abolitionist Josiah Quincy Jr. also served as the city's mayor from 1845 through 1849. In 1883, a book based on Quincy's collection of journals, diaries, letters, and remembrances, entitled Figures of the Past from the Leaves of Old Journals, was published posthumously. Included within the works are Quincy's remembrances of his father. Quincy's father, Josiah Quincy III, was a prominent Massachusetts politician in his own right, even more renowned than his son, serving in the U.S. House of Representatives 1805 through 1813, as mayor of Boston 1823 to 1828, and as president of Harvard 1829 to 1845. While serving in Congress, Quincy visited Mount Vernon to meet with Bushrod Washington, General Washington's nephew, the inheritor of Mount Vernon and a Supreme Court justice. The story, however, as relayed by Quincy Jr., contained a distinctly spooky element. In the spring of 1806, the story recounts, Quincy arrived at Mount Vernon to speak with Bushrod Washington, intent on staying the night as a guest. In Figures of the Past narrative, Quincy Jr. explained that while he was in Washington, D.C. at the time, he was too young to remember the actual event. And while the accuracy of much of Quincy Jr.'s book should be doubted, this particular story was one that he claimed was ingrained within his memory because it was constantly referred to in the family circle. What was this story that was important enough to have such a frequent topic of family conversation? The tale was my father's only ghost story. Upon Quincy III's arrival at Mount Vernon, Bushrod Washington assigned his guest to the Washington's bedchamber, the chamber in which his uncle had died. For dramatic effect, Quincy Jr. explained, Judge Washington, as he withdrew, mentioned the rumor that an interview with Washington had been granted with some of its former occupants. Upon hearing the news from Bushrod, Quincy's father pondered the possibility that he might be found worthy to behold the glorified spirit of him who was so revered by his countrymen. It seems that even George Washington's ghost was revered by Americans. The warning proved to be prophetic, according to Quincy Jr., explaining that during the night his father did see Washington. However, Quincy Jr. qualifies, this is all I have to say about it, because if he gave more details, he would have to consult an expert in cerebral illusions. Despite the younger Quincy's hesitation to give more details, he assured readers that his father's assurance in this matter was perfect, and that his father believed that brain action was at times set up in us by friends no longer in the flesh, and that his own life has been guided by those mysterious influences. Even though Quincy Jr. claimed not to want to relay more of this incident, his writing seems to indicate otherwise. With little transition, the narrative continued by telling of Bushrod Washington allowing Josiah Quincy III to enter Washington's tomb, a custom connected with the hospitalities of Mount Vernon in Judge Washington's time, and an act that would scarcely be possible among persons of refinement at the present day. Quincy hints at the possible cause for George Washington's ghost to be lingering at Mount Vernon, explaining that the velvet cover of the coffin was hanging in tatters, it having been brought to this condition by the assaults of relic hunters. Quincy concluded by quoting Ralph Waldo Emerson's aphorism, cared not to strip the dead of his sad ornament, because of all fetishes with which the imagination contrives to associate the august spirits of the great. Quincy claimed such miserable shreds and patches are the most vulgar. Wise advice. So next time anyone feels compelled to touch objects in the Mount Vernon mansion or museum, perhaps think to Josiah Quincy III and the awful fright he had at Mount Vernon, caused by the callousness of those touching Washington's belongings. Because you too can be haunted by the spirit of Washington, and while his living being may have been first in peace, who knows just what Washington's ghost had in mind for those bold enough to disturb his belongings. Thank you once again for joining us today for drinks, recipes, and a few chills at the Pawtuxet General. Please like, share, and subscribe to get the latest Pawtuxet General update. And if you would like this ad-free, earlier than the usual downloads, free packs of cookies at the Pawtuxet Village Farmers Market, and surprise gifts, follow the link to patreon.com and sign up as a patron. For as little as $3 a month, considering the 2 packs of cookies are $6, it's quite a deal. Top-level Patreons get special bonuses like small pies at the market or in-state aftermarket delivery. So think about it and reach out to us. Our email is jess@pawtuxetgeneral.com. But until then, this is Jess, and I'll meet you right back here next time at the Pawtuxet General. A Something for Posterity production, pre-recorded in Pawtuxet.